Jan, you're live.
Morning, Sean. I want to thank you because I took your challenge of doing the recorded live calls and just inviting people to come while I was recording them. And it got me to do 4 calls that I'd probably still be waiting to do. So I realized from that it really, for me, is an issue of just scheduling what I need to do. And today you've given me ideas on some additional things I need to do, so thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Jan, you're welcome. Thanks so much for sharing that. Thank you so much. I just want to comment on it. Scheduling it is so important. Most of you folks know I do a weekly coaching call, and I try to do a weekly faith-based call. And the fact of the matter is, those 2 things get done almost every single week because they're on my schedule. There's a lot of other things that I'd love to do, but they don't get done every week because they're not on my schedule. But these things are on my schedule. And even if, like this week, something comes up at that scheduled time, I can change the schedule, but it's on the schedule. It's amazing that once we put things on a schedule, I've had folks that are CEO levels, vice president levels, people that have, run a successful, huge business in the past where it was an offline business and they had employees and they had people that counted on them and they run a big business. They should be able to run a puny little domain name. They struggle. And one of the big differences is that when you run a big business, you have a schedule. Even if you're the big boss, you know that you've got to be there by 7:45 in the morning because everybody else gets in at 8. If you know that every week payroll has to be done, you just do it. But when you work for yourself, it's easy to say, well, I'm free. I can do these things whenever I want. And the problem with whatever I want is a lot of times they just don't get done. And as soon as you make that schedule happen, you say, I'm going to do a weekly call. I'm going to do a weekly podcast. I'm going to do a weekly mega post. Whatever it is, all of a sudden when you have that schedule, things can really open up. So, Jan, thank you so very much for sharing that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And then as we wrap up this call, folks, I want to summarize a few things. I personally believe this is one of the most powerful calls I've done all year because it is spurring folks to action in an amazing, amazing way. Sometimes you teach on a topic and unfortunately only a few people need each particular topic. What I've shared with you folks today, all of you can use this. All of you can use this. And what's really, really exciting is for those of you that were listening and didn't raise your hand, if you read between the lines, when I talked to Mark and Michael especially, they were great examples of a project that needs to be finished. And I gave some quick and dirty ideas for implementation for just getting it done. And, of course, I gave Michael the warning, and I really give it to all of you. Don't get stuck because one step that I give you doesn't fit your personality and it won't work. You are responsible for figuring out how you work. It's your responsibility to figure out, do you work better getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning? Are you a snoozer and you're better if you get up at 10 a.m.? Nobody can figure that out for you. You have the responsibility of figuring that out. It's kind of like if you have kids. You got 3 children. One of them is rambunctious, go-getter, aggressive. The other one goes into tears if you raise your voice at all. The rambunctious, aggressive, go-getter, if you whisper to that kid, nothing's going to happen. The only way to get that aggressive, rambunctious kid to do anything is to take them by the hand and get them all excited and do some rah-rah and go out there and help them with it. But if you were to try that with the other one, who tends to be more timid and maybe less secure, I don't even want to make it negative by saying less secure, but a child that's quieter, and use that approach, they're just going to go into their shell. But that's the kid that you put your arm around them and you say, hey, let's work through this. You can't treat both those children exactly the same because it won't work. But your responsibility as a parent is to figure that out. A lot of times, folks, when they're trying to figure out how to build their business, instead of taking responsibility for figuring it out, they want to outsource the entire responsibility to their coach. But as a coach, my job is to give you ideas. My job is to say, come back in 3 weeks and report in. My job is to hold you accountable. And obviously, over time, I can help you figure out what your style is. But it's your responsibility to say, I don't do well with that type of instruction. I don't do well with that type of situation. So find a way to make it work. Don't just say, okay, well, that won't work for me, so I can't do this. I'll just be stuck for another 10 years. Find a way. The successful people in this world find a way. There's no one right way to win a war. There's no one right way to raise children. There's no one right way to be a husband or a wife. There's no one right way to go to church. There's no one right way to pray. But what there is the ability for you to take your God-given brain that God's given you and say, what works best for me? How do I communicate with my husband or wife best? How do I build a business best? How do I have the most energy? Do I need to get up at 6 in the morning and go to bed at 8? Or am I a snoozer and I have to get up at 10 and go to bed at midnight? What is it going to take for you to build your business? And when you can figure that out and then just do it and don't let anything hold you back, don't let a single detail from me hold you back. Take my big picture, figure the details out if you have to. Folks, I encourage you. All of you have a 10-year project inside of you that could be done in a month or 2 or 3. I encourage you, come up with a reason to do it. Because the fact of the matter is the next 10 years are going to pass. They're going to come and go whether you do your project or not. Do you want to wake up for 10 years from now saying, well, I didn't do it? Or do you want to wake up 10 years from now and say, I did it? What's going to feel better? And so, folks, at this point, that's what I'm giving you. I'm giving you a challenge to do that. You've got a long week ahead of you. Most of you have some time off next week. I encourage you, take advantage of this opportunity and be able to report back in after the holiday and say, wow, I've done something amazing.